Trumpet of the last few days. I'm Stanley Farrar.
And I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar. Also, making Tang with cold water makes the powder take a really long time to dissolve.
Aren't you supposed to make it with lukewarm to warm water?
Don't have a lot of options when you're making it in quantity.
We got a Tang addict here.
No, yeah,
It's better than soda.
Before we took and came onto Lime, Robert took and made a comment about the media taking and trying to make Russia always the bad guy, but not China. And why would they do such a thing? Well, in my opinion, the reason why they're focusing on Russia instead of China, China is got almost all the politicians in their hip pocket. They've paid about them off. And they're focusing on Russia because Russia is a threat to China. Their technology is much more advanced than China's is. And unlike China's, it has proven to work, where China's advanced technologies is always fall far short of their design capabilities.
Well, movie villains typically go in trends anyway, and you've got different archetypes. Mm-hmm. Like you have the posh British manipulator, if you will. You have your standard Russian syndicate of evil. You've got your German evil scientist. There was the standard Middle Eastern terrorist for a while, and a surprisingly large amount of Japanese imperialists, which is
and the reason
interesting.
The reason why he's talking about movie villains is because we made a comment about the fact that my mustache is like my beard, my facial hair is the supervillain facial hair.
Yeah, the supervillain goatee.
And what it is really is the Russian style.
Now, the thing about it is that you notice they never take and portray the Chinese as the villain.
Yeah.
It's true.
They always show the Chinese as being these wise, intellectual types.
Unless they're portraying the romance of the Three Kingdoms, in which case the Chinese are the heroes, the villains, wise, and manipulative all at the same time in all three different factions.
Yeah, well, that's the exception.
But that's a Chinese story.
Yeah.
Now, when you take and you look at the, let's take the Chinese aircraft carrier. Did you realize the planes in the Chinese aircraft carrier has so little thrust they can't take off armed?
So they're just plain planes?
They're just plain planes. The aircraft carrier would have to be a half again longer for them to take off if they were going to actually take off armed.
What if they use catapults?
The Chinese technology is almost all propaganda. They do use catapults.
And it's still not long enough? Wow.
No. They have almost no. They have so little thrust that our F-35s ran off and left their top plane.
So,
like it was sitting still.
For viewer context, a catapult in regards to aircraft carrier terms is basically something that latches onto the bottom of a jet, and it allows them to build up a lot of thrust before kind of releasing them and shooting them off the aircraft carrier like a rubber band. for lack of a better term. It's a massively simplified way of describing it, but ineffective. It allows you to have a shorter runway to get planes in the air.
Which means you can build smaller aircraft carriers,
now
or
they're jump jets.
like us, build bigger aircraft carriers with more jets.
Now the Chinese jump jets, they can launch armed, but they're in the same field as a Harrier.
Mm-hmm. So they launch vertically.
Yes.
Those things have a lot of problems.
But the yeah.
A Harrier
now we have
jet,
jump jet carriers.
A Harrier jet is just asking for mechanical failure. It's completely throwing out the book of keep it simple, stupid, and just all-inning on over-complex ideas, and it breaks down 98% of the time because of it, regardless of what country it's from, US included.
Well, it's a British original design.
They do like to make everything more complicated than it has to be, with adding extra letters into their words and everything.
Remember, color is spelled COLOR.
And on top of that, they never pronounce their R's correctly.
And aluminum does not have extra I.
or like reversing the E and R in theater.
Theater.
Theatre.
Now, here's a question. What is it with theater snobs who always insist that it has to be pronounced as theater or theater if they add an accent? Or am I the only one who's been browbeaten by a theater snob because I wouldn't pronounce it the way they wanted me to?
That's probably it. I haven't dealt with too many theater snobs. We don't have a lot of theaters in our part of the world.
Except for the movie theater.
Theaters.
It's probably a Broadway thing.
Oh, if you're dealing with New Yorkers, it's no wonder.
I wasn't dealing with a New Yorker, but I was dealing with a Yankee.
Anybody who would take and elect Ocasio-Cortez, as you kind of question their sanity anyway.
Oh, man. Who was that comedian? I can't think of their name right now, but I think it was Red Skelton, who said anyone who'd go to a psychiatrist ought to have their head examined.
Yeah, that was Red Skelton. But you're taking a look at our modern society, and half of them act like they've had a frontal lobotomy. And we know they haven't because they outlawed those years ago.
They've instead switched to doing long-form lobotomies in the form of the U.S. school system.
Now they don't want kids going to school.
Kids are better off for it. There's nothing that'll rot your brain faster than school.
Yeah. I remember when they took and came out with a a discussion over, well, what do we do with the Bible? And because after all, in American translations, the King James is on 12th grade level, the New King James is on the 11th grade level, the New International Version is on a 9th grade level, and your average high school graduate's on a 3rd grade level in most big cities. So, what do you do? Well, the logical thing would have been to take and go and educate some people.
Yeah.
But instead, they dumbed down the translations to get a translation that was on a 3rd grade level.
Let's see, what was the name of that version again? Because it wasn't the NIV. It was because, as you already mentioned, the NIV was 9th grade level. The Way?
I believe that was the Word.
The Word?
The Word.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think there was a picture of a book version that was on a 1st grade level too.
Now that we're in January, we are fixing to come to either a massive conflict or a bunch of spineless politicians and taking and turning over and showing their yellow bellies to the world. What's your opinion on it, Robert?
Well, Robert?
Can you hear me?
Oh, Des just gibberish to me. I couldn't hear a word he said.
Ah, okay. He said now that we're in the new year, we're about to encounter either a massive conflict or a bunch of politicians going belly up. So, which one is the more likely in your opinion?
Fucking of us.
That, if I recall correctly, means why not both? Yeah. And amusing taco commercial, actually.
Well, they've been calling for a 10 million person march on January 6th in DC.
I hope they do it. Don't know if they will, but I hope they do.
Would the Republican Congress be spineless enough to not object to the crooked election with that large of opposition standing right outside the door?
The thing is, they've already got enough to start the process. Because Josh Hawley said he's going to object, and over 100 representatives said they're going to object. I don't like that ratio though. 100 to 1 is not good.
Well, being Cruz is on that list of people who were coming before the Supreme Court, he'll probably object as well.
Mm-hmm. But let's see, is he a representative or a congressman?
He's a senator.
Well, he's not.
A senator or a representative.
All representatives. Yeah, all representatives are congressmen. He's a senator.
Okay.
He's from the state of Texas.
He's one of the only senators that I actually have any respect or hope for. So I hope he does.
And I figure Cotton will probably object. In fact, I think he said he was going to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised Rand Paul. I don't know if he's said whether or not he's going to object.
I thought he already came out as a rhino.
I haven't heard.
Rand Paul?
Yeah.
He leans more libertarian.
Yeah.
Well, McConnell he makes all his money from the Chinese anyway. So he's firmly entrenched in the Democrat Party's policies and ways. Um, if given a gun, he'd probably assassinate the president in order to ensure a smooth transition to the Democrats.
Well, think about it. Okay, you've got Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, Pat Toomey, and McConnell. Boom, they lose in the Senate.
Mm-hmm. But the Senate only decides who's the vice president is, not who the president is.
But the thing is, what they want, I'm not saying it's constitutional, is for them to object to the vote, for it to go to a vote in both houses, and then if there's a split decision, it would go to the delegates rather than what it should be, which is a contested vote. It goes to the delegates because they don't believe in law.
Yeah. No, they don't believe in the law, and I don't figure that. I figure it'll come to a vote in the House, and the House is going to shoot it down, and then it'll come to a vote in the
Senate, and the Senate's going to shoot it down.
Senate, and the Senate's going to shoot it down. Unless they actually get the 10 million people protesting outside. Then I expect them to take and say, well, it's too dangerous for us to vote on the matter.
Which would be really interesting.
Which forces it into a contingent election. By force of populace. 10 million people could take over the entire country, the entire government.
Yeah, easily. In fact, I'm sure we've brought up this exact topic before.
Well, we have. And thing about it is that while if it comes to a vote, I am certain Robert's correct. I do not see those yellow-bellied rhinos in the Senate doing anything that will jeopardize their money-making operation.
Mm-hmm. Look, it's the rare yellow-bellied rhino in its natural habitat. Washington, D.C.
Not nearly rare enough.
But when it comes... That's true. But when it comes down to what some speculate will happen if there is 10 million people there, actually, even if there's just 1 million people there, they're predicting that if they don't take and push it into a contested election in the Congress, they're going to burn DC.
Which, honestly, I wanted them to do for some time.
There won't be a Congress. Thing about it is technically speaking, if you follow the trends of what happens when the government becomes corrupt and quits listening to the people, normally when it gets overthrown, people move in and hang or the traitors.
Yeah. Pretty quickly, usually.
So usually.
So that means that if 10 million people show up,
we'll have to have a new election anyway.
And have to have a new election anyway.
Yeah.
Because you're talking 75% of Congress dangling from ropes, and same with the Senate, and as well as the Supreme Court, because they're all traitors.
Yeah.
And with our glorious have to wear mask laws, nobody know who did it.
It's
their security
interesting
cameras would be worthless.
how little cultural norms flip on a dime in a single year. It used to be illegal to walk into a bank with any form of face covering on. Now it's illegal to do the opposite.
I wonder how much armed robberies have increased since this all started.
Who knows?
I don't know nationally, but we know that in New York City, the crime rate has gone up 350%.
Well, just homicides have gone up 41%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but how much of that is from mask laws and how much of that is because they are defunding their police?
Probably both.
Probably both have a contributing factor.
Because I know that that crime spiked 300% when they defunded their police. Mm-hmm. So I think that's more the reason rather than the masks individually. Talking about masks, though, I did see something recently that there was a massive, like multi-million man protest in Hong Kong where they were tearing down facial recognition towers and that sort of thing.
Good for them. When will someone start gun running into Hong Kong, though?
I'm still waiting for more news on that because I haven't seen anything about it in a while. But I hope it went well for them.
Same. Still think they need
guns. And I've been watching the news on China, and I haven't heard a thing about what has happened. So the Chinese government's been keeping a real closed mouth on it.
Yeah, of course. They don't want anyone to know that their grip is slipping.
The thing about it, what gets me is, okay, here we are with a bunch of Chinese spies in government, and we know they'll never take and get tried and actually treated as the traitors they are, but they're gambling big on a country that's on the edge of collapse.
Yeah. Oh, on a side note, and this is probably something I'll have to edit out. Someone should tell Matthew that we have made him a fugitive in China by proxy, because their law also applies to any of your relatives who may go there.
You know?
And him going there is actually a concern, so we should probably warn him.
You mean he shouldn't know about the actual state of the country he loves so much?
I was just thinking that getting chained to the floor and sprayed with fire hoses and beaten with rubber hoses might actually change his view of the Chinese.
I don't know. After that strep throat and that bread and breakfast incident, I don't think anything will change his view of China.
Wasn't he literally just sleeping on a mat on the floor?
Yeah.
There's a lot worse.
With like a towel as a blanket.
Yeah.
I do respect his friend who is willing to endure the same.
Ah, my.
Well, you got to admit it would have been an adventure.
Oh yeah.
Normally, they're very careful about treating the Americans very well because they don't want them to know what everybody's dealing with.
Guess he just slipped through the cracks.
Because he sure doesn't look like a Chinese person.
Yeah.
Or as the proper term was back 50 years ago, a Chinaman.
Which is about as racist as calling someone from Ireland an Irishman.
So not racist at all.
Exactly.
It's not racist at all. Chinese is a modern term for them. It's kind of like people from Arkansas used to be called Arkies, and now they're called Arkansans.
Stupid. And people from
they didn't want it to
Oklahoma
sound
used to be Okies.
They still are Okies.
Yeah, but only because they embraced it. They literally have a whole song about it.
Yeah.
They won't bad not if you call them Oklahomans, but they're Okies.
Well, there's a song called "Yonder Comes a Sucker," and from back in I think the 30s, and that was what the people from Illinois used to be called, and used to call themselves were suckers.
It's like people from Indiana are Hoosiers. I still don't know what a Hoosier is to this day. Other than people from Indiana.
Here's a question. The Canadians like calling people a hoser. What is that? Is that a compliment, an insult, neutral?
It's
in Canada, I don't know. In the United States, it's an insult.
Yeah.
So in Canada, I haven't a clue.
An interesting thing to note. Where I work in Italy gets protested a lot, like on a yearly basis. And they come out, they have their signs, they hold their protests, and they leave things behind a lot. There's one particular sign that was stationed there with like a Statue of Liberty with her face replaced with a skull, holding up the type of antenna that I work on or near. And it is the coolest design I have ever seen, even though it was intended to insult us. In fact, when it fell off the little billboard they put it up on, we actually took it and brought it in to set up in the floor that we work on.
Was it a 5G protest sign?
No, but I can't get more specific than that for reasons.
I see.
It is not 5G, however.
Because a lot of people are protesting 5G for some reason.
It is a similar type of scare. They believe that we are working on death rays rather than satellite communication. Yeah.
Speaking of death rays, there was a group of people in the embassy in China and in Cuba that started having weird hearing things and seeing things that weren't there, and it was across a mass.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that they were being targeted by a high-powered radio beam.
Or maybe they were being poisoned.
It didn't kill them, though. Or poisoned. That's a very good possibility, too. But it only happened in the two communist countries of China and Cuba. They're currently in the court system over it, filing lawsuits against China. Like that's
Oh, you know how that goes. I don't understand why these people think that they have some semblance of rights.
Because if they didn't believe they had some semblance of rights, they would have revolted long ago.
But it's very clear they don't.
Well, it's amazing. Nobody has rights in a communist country.
It's very clear when you're on the outside looking in and you know what rights actually feel like.
Well, I had a friend from Vietnam. And when I say from Vietnam, I don't mean like most people who are from Vietnam in America who are really just like second and third generation Americans. This guy was from Vietnam. He was like, in America, it's great. You can talk bad about the president all you want. You talk bad about our leaders in Vietnam, in my home country, you get banished. I thought that was a little light. I would have thought the death penalty, but
so
yeah, they go soft on them compared to China.
I had something to say. I've forgotten it. Oh yeah. So yeah, it took me a bit. There's something that I learned that is interesting in regards to privacy, actually. People who grew up and were raised without any form of privacy have no concept of what privacy is. And they have no need to make a fuss of it. However, after they've gotten a taste of privacy, they are never able to live without it again. I think freedom works the same way. In fact,
I do too.
In regards to, and this is an interesting note, and this is more just on my personal observation rather than actual evidence, so take it with a grain of salt. I have observed that when dealing with large groups of people living in a small confined space for a long period of time, the illusion of privacy is more valuable than actual privacy itself. And the illusion of privacy will keep them docile when otherwise they would have gone ballistic.
So you're saying that China's giving them the illusion of rights instead of rights themselves to keep them calm?
Yeah.
Well, or it was, rather. Now it's not even trying to do that.
So, like, from my personal observations, you can stack people in rooms with about 100 people in a room sleeping all together in racks stacked 3 high with about 2 feet in between that you can walk in between, and everyone's stuff is stacked on top of each other in those little bunks. And they all have to share one bathroom that has 3 stalls in it and 2 showers. And the illusion of privacy you give them, put doors on the stalls and give curtains for the bunk beds and the showers. They have no privacy, but they have the illusion of privacy, and that's enough.
When you take and you look at the notion of freedom, though, people will surrender their freedom in many cases for security.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in our country. They want the security and safety more than they want their freedom.
Who was it who said that someone who would sacrifice their freedom for safety deserves neither? Or was it that they will receive neither? I forget.
I remember that. I think I've heard both quotes before, actually.
I think it was one of our founding fathers.
But, yeah, it was. I just can't think of which one. The thing is that when you take and look at the way things have been going, and you've got certain pockets of this country that don't really care about the security. They want their freedom. And then you've got other pockets of this country that doesn't care a thing about freedom. They want their security.
Mm-hmm.
And those two pockets are incompatible.
And that's what's going to cause the country to divide sooner or later. It may not be this year. It may not be 4 years from now. It may not even be 8 years from now. But it will happen. It's inevitable.
Well, they saw the Civil War coming a mile away.
Yeah.
And we've been barreling towards another one ever since.
I wouldn't say ever since.
Well, there have been
There was a great deal of unity after World War II.
That was the exception, not the norm.
But you said ever since, which implies that there was a continuous strain in a linear direction headed directly toward it, which isn't true.
You can't tell me that after World War II, the South wasn't still saying, "Save your Confederate money, boys. The South is going to rise again."
I'm pretty sure I can. And on top of that, I can say...
I can tell you right now they were.
I can also tell you
the statement
that everyone who was willing and to fight did not care about that kind of thing anymore. Especially not when they had to deal with the fighting men from all over the country. And I will also say that the country was never more united after 9/11. Well, then after 9/11.
And then never more divided.
For a brief period. After 9/11.
The thing about it, that's what panicked the Democrats was the country's unity after 9/11.
Yeah.
They can't have a united country.
Can't afford to.
Well, we can't afford to be spending trillions of dollars, but we're doing it.
Yeah. For ridiculous left-wing causes in foreign countries.
I still say the president should have just not signed the bill. Just left it. Pocket veto.
I'd have stuck it in my pocket and walked away with it. Can't override a pocket veto.
Yeah, but that only really applies if he is actually being replaced.
No, it can apply at the end of your term too.
Mm-hmm. As long as you never send it back, it doesn't matter how long you pocket it.
Ah.
So you just stick it in your pocket and it never goes back. It isn't signed. It's not vetoed. It's just sitting there.
Lost in the paperwork.
They used to. Yep.
Or as the old expression used to be, lost behind the radiator. But radiators aren't that common anymore.
The thing about it is the bill was over 2,000 pages long. I don't sign anything until I've read it.
Yeah.
So it's sitting on the desk.
Got more important things to read.
And I'm not going to read it. That's right. I don't read 2,000-page bills.
When the Bible is shorter than your bill, it's probably too long.
Yes.
And just note,
when the New York City
the Bible
phone book is
the Bible is small that despite not being written on legal size paper and legal font.
Yeah.
In fact, if I recall correctly, legal the legal size paper is longer than normal.
It is. It is.
Yes. 8.5 by 14.
Well, the standard size is 8.5 by 12. I think the standard
11.
Bible is like 8.5 by 11.
Yeah, 8.5 by 11.
And the standard size Bible is what? 7 by 8, 6 by
4?
8,
with tiny print though.
Yeah.
With tiny print.
But you can generally say that if your bill is bigger than the New York City phone book, you really got a problem.
Yeah.
Or War and Peace.
War and Peace, by the way.
War and Peace, yes.
War and Peace was a really boring book. Really boring. It had this entire build-up of all the characters you're supposed to know and like in France, and all the layout of the thing, and then it says book 1 ends, and then suddenly it's talking about Russia for the next entire book, where it's introducing new characters and new plot lines and new political intrigue factions that you're supposed to care about, all while not forgetting the stuff in the previous book. And if I recall correctly, there is an entire paragraph on just a line of people standing there in greatcoats in Russia as the snow first starts beginning to fall. Ugh. Ugh. I had to drop the book. It was just too boring.
The fact that you made it through book 1.
Now, the thing about it is the division we see here in the United States is very similar to the divisions that they were looking at in Russia during the time in which War and Peace was written.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they don't write anything like that.
Yeah, but why did the guy care so much about France?
Because the French Revolution, Josh. They were the first socialists.
It looks like, for as far as I got into the book, it looks like they were building up for some sort of conflict between Russia and France. And why?
Well, that could have been Napoleonic Wars.
It was around the Napoleonic War era, and there was a whole lot of way too much stuff about French aristocrats. Why did he ever think anyone cared that much about French aristocrats?
Especially being during the Napoleonic War, the French aristocrats, for the most part, had already been given a severe haircut.
Yeah, but this was set just before that. So the French aristocrats were still in power, and there was this whole thing where where he was building up the rise of the influence of the bourgeoisie, for lack of a better term, in France, and the tensions between those factions. And there was the multiple different political factions of the aristocrats. And he built that up for an entire book. And instead of paying it off, he went to Russia and started a build-up all over again.
You have to remember Tolstoy was Russian.
Yeah, then he should have written the entire book from the Russian perspective. I'm still mad at this. I read this book 10 years ago. I'm still mad at this.
No. Thing about it is, like I said, we're facing similar divisions in the United States as what Russia was facing during the time period he wrote that.
Yeah.
But we're not the only ones. After all, in Britain, and Boris Johnson, the prime minister, his dad has filed for citizenship in France because he doesn't want to leave the EU.
Good riddance. They don't need traitors like that anyway.
Boris Johnson. That's true. Boris Johnson's dad, Boris Johnson's brother, and his sister all voted to remain, while Boris Johnson and his mother voted to Brexit. And they're all supposed to be part of the Conservative Party.
Apparently, some are more conservative than others.
What are they? What are they? Conservative Soviets? Because that's about the only thing that would be considered conserving would be the Soviet Union that compared to the EU.
Maybe they've got invested interests.
And tragically, we share a first name. Me and Boris Johnson's dad. We're both Stanley.
To be fair, part of the reason why everybody just calls me by my last name is because my first name is common as dirt. You can't throw a rock into a crowd without hitting at least 5 Joshes.
But then again, what kind of an Englishman names his son Boris?
Boris Karloff fan?
Yeah, or a Soviet fan.
Fair enough. Boris and Natasha.
Because I figure the guy had to be into the Russians. But then again, he was of corrupted blood.
Yeah, he did.
His mother was French.
He was part French. It's interesting how for the longest time France was one of the closest allies of the United States, and ever since World War II they've been nothing but an object of scorn and derision. They even created the Statue of Liberty, for crying out loud.
And we gave them
should we give it to the Chinese?
And we gave them a radio tower.
Well,
yeah. Maybe that's why there's such hostility.
The radio tower was more useful. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but it was hated. They referred to it as the awful tower for ages.
Now it's one of their biggest landmarks.
Yep. But they hated it when it was first put up.
I was pretty sure that the
biggest radio tower in the world.
I was pretty sure that the Eiffel Tower, that the Statue of Liberty, and the Ferris wheel were all designed by the same guy, weren't they?
The Eiffel Tower was designed by Eiffel. That's why it's called the Eiffel Tower.
Okay. But I know that the Statue of Liberty and the Ferris wheel were designed by the same guy.
May have been. And London's got a huge Ferris wheel.
Now, here's the question. Why did they permanently close off the balcony on the torch of the Statue of Liberty. I only know it's there because I saw
I've
a
heard
photo
theories
taken from it back when the back when the statue was still copper colored. It still technically is copper colored, but copper oxide colored now, but regardless.
Here's the theory I heard on it. It doesn't mean it's true. I heard the theory they closed it off to keep people from committing suicide by jumping from it.
You know, that makes a lot of sense, actually. But could you imagine the money they would get from the tours up there?
Mm-hmm. I just think of a nutcase like that guy during the 70s that took a bunch of rifles into the University of Texas clock tower.
Mm-hmm. The sniper guy, right?
And thinking, yeah, what kind of damage could somebody do with the balcony of the Statue of Liberty in New York?
Not much, considering everything is so far away from it. But there was
I've never been there.
guy who did that tightrope.
I've been to New York.
There was that one guy who did the tightrope walking stunt between the Twin Towers back when they were the same size. And standing, for that matter. But in fact, that was the reason why they built an extension onto one of them, so that they would be of different heights, was to prevent someone from trying to do it again.
I didn't know they had built an extension on them.
Yeah.
One of them, were both the same size.
One of them was slightly taller than the other one because someone did that tightrope walking stunt.
I can't, with the wind up there, I can't imagine trying to do that.
He survived it. In fact, he pulled it off flawlessly. I'll pick that up later.
I heard a TED Talk.
If you've liked what you've heard, or dislike what you've heard, or generally apathetic on the subject, feel free to take and subscribe and take and hit the thumbs up button. If you thoroughly dislike this, hit the thumbs down button. And if you take and have something to share, feel free to share. We love to take and get to see responses. It also feeds the algorithm. Though I have learned that if you don't look, they only actually keep track of the thumbs ups.
And if you want me to fight you in a duel over my opinion on a old European classic, be sure to set the date far enough out that I will be back from Europe at the time.
So you don't get lynched by an angry European mob.
Be sure to take and share this with your friends, enemies, relatives, and total strangers if you find the possibility, because that is the only way we can truly expand the reach of this program. We thank you, and we wish you a good day.